Step inside the walls of the 25-year leader in classic and custom boat restorations. Watch as the meticulous craftsmen use the most advanced materials and processes in the industry to restore, repair, and build some of the most beautiful boats on the water, including their own Matan Classic Collection.
Hi folks, I'm Mike Borelli. Here at Matan, we custom build classic style vessels and perform restorations on boats we refer to as the family heirloom. We also take on fiberglass repairs sent to us from across the country with the client's confidence that vessel will be returned better than new. From the very beginning, our work was described as meticulous, and I often told to be anal retentive.
And this is Making It Metan.
Hello, I'm Mike Borelli. Welcome back, and thank you for joining us on episode 2 of Making It Metan. Hey, we're not going to be one of those shows that's going to eat up first 5 minutes showing you a long recap of the work completed in the last episode. For that, sign on to our YouTube channel and catch up on the last episode of Making It Metan. And we'll continue to post previous episodes every other week on Matan's YouTube channel. And God no, I don't want to sound like one of those YouTubers by smash that like and subscribe button. But if you do hit the subscribe button, you will get notified when we upload our new episodes. And don't forget, follow us on our Instagram page and keep up what's currently going on in the shop. We ended episode 1 with Keith finishing up on a tremendous amount of bodywork for the interior liner. A unique aspect of this part of the repair is the fact that we needed to finish the surfaces of that inside liner to final finish glossy surface before we can go ahead beginning glassing the settee and the sink basin back in place. If you notice, we had to do the same process on our new hull to deck joint that we created to go along the top missing section of the hull. We needed to finish the upper part of the hull flange to a glossy finish as well before moving on to a major amount of fiberglass work that we still had this huge hole in the side of our hull. Now, some will say we could have left that surface in raw fiberglass or even rough gel coat because the gunnel flange is going to come over and cover it and no one would ever see it. However, part of Making It Metan is making it like we were never there. And for whatever reason the owner ever messes that boat up again and crunches that rub rail section, someone goes back in there to fix it, they'll never know we were there. Okay, back to the interior. Keith laminated the settee and the sink basin sections back together outside the boat. We then moved that section inside the boat, temporarily screwing it in place. Keith and Joe again teamed up just as they did in that inner liner and laminated the back side of the sections with multiple layers of 1708 tabbing. Keith then ground back the joints and the seams and laminated that outside with a number of layers of tapered cut 1708 fiberglass tabbing. Then, having his share of bodywork, he readied the surfaces for high build primer, then gel coat application. Although we are all very good body men, it is next to impossible to get the bodywork perfect without, as we say it, burying the bodywork in high build. In episodes, you'll hear one of us refer to Duratec. That is our vinyl ester primer that will become our final surface that we'll be applying our gel coat of primer to. The application of high build primer along with the process of guide coating of the repair area is the most crucial step of the bodywork process. This ensures the lines and the edges are perfect because remember, once you put a glossy, shiny surface on something, it's going to act like a magnifying glass. While leaving Keith alone to get that last interior section not only gel coated, but sanded, wet sanded, buffed, polished, all done. Knowing the interior was ready to go back together was a huge accomplishment for all of us in this very big repair. Well, we're going to take a break, and when we return, maybe we'll even give you folks a peek to what our interior looked like not only before, but after. So stay tuned.
We're here up inside a Boston Whaler 420 Outrage, and you can remember earlier on, there wasn't too much left of this interior. We had to cut out large sections of both liners, double interior liners here for the set bay and the inner hull line. And we had holes where we're having conversations with guys on the other side of the hull. One of the toughest things about a job like this is, in fact, the interior components back together. A lot of these components were installed with the idea of never being taken apart or removed out of the boat. And we had to really think about that. We almost had to reverse engineer something that was engineered to be done one way. We take great pride in what we do, and when I look around this cabin, this is a job that even I said, wow, these guys are freaking good.
Scotty began the fiberglass work up on the bow section. One of the first areas he tackled was the chine area, where it took multiple direct hits from the top of the pylon. Although the pylon did in fact go through the laminate, remember, the foam kept that pylon from breaching through the hull. Now structurally, we glassed the hell out of this area from inside, so we have all the confidence in the world the structural strength is there. However, we have a good amount of fiberglass that is missing on the outside that needed to be built. It's going to take many layers of laminate to do that. However, we don't want to do multiple layups to accomplish our build thickness. Not to mention, we're doing it upside down, so we don't have gravity on our side. Unless we change the gravity. And the way we do that is with vacuum. Scotty was able to lay up 7 to 10 layers of glass, tapered cut to the shape of his repair. We vacuum bagged 7 to 10 layers of fiberglass all at once, leaving Scotty a small layup of just a few layers of chopped mat to finish his buildup. Sometimes the laminate will move around when we are initially clamping these multiple layers in place. That's not really a concern, because what we'll do is turn the vacuum down a bit, and we'll be able to manipulate our layers of fiberglass under the bag while giving us enough vacuum to still hold the laminate in place. And that's how we change gravity. Or should I say, control gravity. Pretty cool, huh? And speaking of vacuum bag, that is exactly how we made our huge panel to fill in the side of our hull. We created our own layup. In fact, we did it right on the floor of the fiberglass shop. To fabricate this big flat panel, we prepped our area to set up our vacuum bag and manifolds. We then did this big hand layup with numerous layers of 1708 and multiple layers of 1 ounce mat. We then pulled our vacuum bag over our part, and we vacuum bagged, or should I say clamped, all those layers of glass together right there on our flat floor, giving us this perfect, flat, usable panel that we're about to use to fill in our big missing hull section. Scotty continued up forward, fiberglassing the other large repair areas, and started the process of recreating the many details coming together up forward, specifically in the ports areas. He did this by making himself multiple jigs from the other side of the boat. He then would flip his jigs over 180 degrees and be able to move them throughout the repair to ensure that he was shaping the fiberglass the closest he possibly can. So when we do go into our fairing stage, we're using as little fairing compound as we can, ensuring the most solid, permanent, long-lasting repair. Leaving Scotty alone, well, not really, only about 15 feet away, we began our focus on the structural repair process of the big missing section of our hull. And that began with us fabricating our own composite shear ties that will be holding our panel in place. Although we only cut through 3 of Boston Whaler's shear ties, to ensure the structural integrity, we fabricated 6 shear ties to connect both that inner skin of the deck liner as well as the replacement section of our hull. We use a process called vacuum infusion to construct our composite parts, such as our decks, deck hatches, among other parts, such as the hulls to our smaller Classic Collection tender series. Talk about a little overkill to Boston Whaler shear ties. However, the repair process is not the manufacturing process. So with the repair process, it's always important to overdo it, especially when it comes to strength. In the manufacturing process, Boston Whaler engineered the shear tie system to work perfectly in the new boat construction process. When it comes to replacing shear ties in the repair process, the engineering is completely different. The shear ties was constructed of 4-pound density perforated foam, laminated with 5 layers to 1708 and 1 ounce of mat on each side. Again, a bit of overkill. After we fabricated and fit our new shear ties, we then plunge cut the front of the shear tie, removing about 1 inch of foam material. We then backfilled that void with a plexus product called Methacrylate. We were able to fiberglass our shear ties to the inside deck liner, ensuring a strong, solid bond. We now have ourselves a solid Methacrylate to composite bond instead of to just bonding to the foam. Well, one thing I know you must be wondering, if you learned anything about Boston Whalers, is that they're foam filled. And you must be saying to yourself, Mike, how do you put the foam back in the boat? Well, stay tuned, and when we come back, you'll find out how we did it on the road, on the water, to making it Matan. Welcome back, and let's jump right back into the question that so many want to ask. Mike, how did you get the foam back into such a large cavity? Well, actually, injecting the foam with the system that we use is the easy part. The time-consuming part was constructing the replacement shear ties in a fashion where they contoured to the very slight curve of the hull side. To the naked eye, it would appear that this large area of the hull was completely flat, where in fact it wasn't. It had the slightest contour, which we had to replicate. We didn't have to go in there and just put a flat panel in place and then build it up with either additional laminations or extra fairing. We wanted to get our panel dead balls on. We wanted to get our panel perfect. So the fairing process, although there would be a lot, it starts with a surface as close to the original surrounding surfaces as possible. So how do we do that? We ran multiple string lines from 2 existing sections of the hull before and after the big replacement area. We then glued small foam composite pieces along each of our shear tie at the exact height of what the bottom, or should I say the inside, of our laminated panel. Even though our replacement panel is constructed of many layers of fiberglass, we engineered the lamination of the panel to be half the thickness of the hull's lamination. We needed to do a full lamination over our replacement panel to the surrounding sections of the hull. Well, what better way to hold a big panel in place? Well, you got it. Vacuum bag it. After we had our indicator blocks in place, we then began foaming the voided section using our nitrogen compressed foaming system. Shortly after we completed the application of the foam, the boys came in and began to shave down the foam as so it's just above the surrounding area of the hull. They then began to longboard, sand down the entire area until they exposed those early indicator blocks that we put in place. This ensured that we were laminating the big panel in place and all the lines are consistent with the existing sections of the hull. After this was complete, it was now time to laminate our panel in place. However, we needed to complete one very important step in the lamination process of this panel, and that is sealing the foam. We needed to seal the foam So when we are vacuum bagging the panel in place, our vacuum suction wasn't leaking out through the foam, or should I say into the foam. If we didn't seal the foam, the vacuum would work its way through the foam and we would never be able to pull the inches of vacuum that's needed to hold this panel in place. To do this, the men skimmed the foam with thickened paste resin and applied 3 layers of 1-ounce mat. They let it dry and then sand grinded the surfaces in preparation for the next major step, and that is vacuum bagging the panel in place. Joe and Keith set their sealant tape and vacuum bag up around our lamination area. Since things are going to get sloppy, they covered up the sealant tape with pieces of 2-inch masking tape, stepped as though the resin cannot find its way to the sealant tape. Once you get any resin on it, it'll never stick to the vacuum bag. So this is a pretty important step in the procedure. To prep the panel itself, we drilled a series of 1/4-inch holes, 2 inches on center, and gave the back panel a very tight skim of our paste. These holes would fill in with resin under vacuum, bonding these multiple layers of laminate together. After many hours under bag, and obviously when it was fully cured, the boys again sand grinded the surfaces of our outer panel and around the panel. The final lamination we did was very similar to the vacuum bagging of our panel. The final lamination consisted of 4 layers of 1-ounce mat and 4 layers of 1708, all tapered cut, to bring the outside of our repair and the panel to one solid lamination. This left us an incredibly straight, precise lamination to begin our fairing process. The closer you get the glasswork, the easier and more efficient the fairing process will be. We like to get our repairs as close as possible in fiberglass laminate and use as little fairing compound putty as possible. Again, back to our Duratec high build primer, we want that to be our final fairing compound, which in fact it is a sprayable fairing compound. The thinner the fairing compound will yield a more precise, straight, and consistent surface. And that's exactly what Keith did. He gave the hull side a nice tight skim of 3M Vinyl Ester Premium fairing putty. He dyed the surface with our guide coat material and brought out the big boy and longboarded the hull side with a 3-foot longboard. After putting a few more skims of glazing putty, what was once a big missing section of a hull was now ready for the application of our high build primer. After one more skim and one more final longboarding and a little bit of detail sanding, this section was now ready for the final coating process. Although you've seen Scotty bounce back in and out, helping out with the panel replacement, we tried to really leave him alone as much as possible to continue to get that amazing body work done up in the bow section. And when we return, catch up on exactly what he's been doing on this road to making it Metan. Hello and welcome back as we're closing in on the completion of the largest phase of the repair to this amazing 420 Outrage. No different than every step Keith did to the preparation of the final coating to the hull side repair, Scotty needed to do the same thing to the forward bow section. However, dealing with way more lines and details. You saw earlier how he made up different jigs to compare his repair to the other side of the boat to ensure everything was symmetrically the same. As he went through the process of the application of fairing putty, he would consistently check each one of these areas until he felt he had all the lines dialed in to get this thing in high build primer. He would then be able to really see the details as he went through the dyeing process, longboarding, and shaping. With high build, every little detail shows up. He'd go back and forth to get those details perfect. He then applied another application of high-build primer and went through the second stage of longboarding and final sanding to absolutely ensure that things were perfect. And as you can see, it was. To keep things moving along, the whole time Scotty was doing his thing up in the bow section, Keith was going through every one of those steps on the gunnel section where we created that new deck joint. We created the deck joint exactly the same way we created the hull joint. We made up multiple parts, blasted them together, screwed them to the existing and new hull joint so they would be in the exact position that we needed them to be. Keith then joined the section at the top of the gunnel with our new deck joint by making a small mold off the radius off the other side of the boat. As discussed in the last episode, we couldn't use the opposite side to make the whole part, say like we did in that Grady White. However, he was able to make a mold of the small radius area, then fiberglass that part to the top of the gunnel and the deck joint. He then went through the fairing process, ready in that area for our final coating process and catching it up to the rest of the starboard hull. To everyone's excitement, we now had all the repairs to the starboard side of our 420 done and ready for final coating, which would be a combination of both gel coat and some of the most amazing painting you'll see in the industry, which all can be seen in the next episode of Making It Matan. So please join me as we take this Outrage to its final completion. And as I said, one of the most amazing all-grip paint jobs you'll see in the industry. So join us, and we'll see you next time on Making It Matan.